The Olympic Games are underway in Paris, which saw a unique citywide opening ceremony on the Seine. Hello, I'm Arnold Knight, and this is The Heat. After 100 years, Paris is hosting the Olympics again, and what an opening ceremony. Instead of staging it in a stadium, the organizers used iconic landmarks along the River Seine to kick off the Games. We go live now to Paris to talk with CGTN correspondent Dan Williams. Dan, what a great location you're at there. Tell us about the groundbreaking opening ceremony and how that set the stage for the Games.
It certainly does. Yeah, it was spectacular, original, slightly odd at times, maybe people could argue, but it was also incredibly wet as well. But this was an opening ceremony that without doubt will live long in the memory, and certainly LA 28 has a hard act to follow. It had an all-star cast, the likes of Lady Gaga, Celine Dion sang, the football star Zinedine Zidane was also part of the torch relay, and it also starred the Minions as well. It was, as you say, the first time an opening ceremony of the Olympics has been held outside of a stadium. That's a massive logistical effort. It took some 85 boats for all of the athletes to be taken down the 6 kilometers of the River Seine. Some 320,000 spectators lined the banks of the river, getting a little bit wet, but you have to argue that it was possibly very much worth it, given the spectacle that they witnessed. Now, the parade of boats, it was pretty lengthy, and the story of the opening ceremony was a story of Paris, it was a story of France, and so we had these different story blocks that really talked about the culture, the art, the music of France, of Paris, and of course then comes the big moment, the lighting of the Olympic flame, and that's always a big secret as to who will have that honor. It fell in the end to France judo star Teddy Winner, as well as the sprinter Marie-José Pérec. Now, it was again another spectacular show where they lit the cauldron together. The cauldron was on top of this hot air balloon that then lifted up into the sky, and I can tell you it's still there right now. It was just another iconic element while Celine Dion sang halfway up the Eiffel Tower. A very memorable opening ceremony.
Dan, 10,500 athletes from 206 countries are in Paris for these Games to compete across 32 sports. Many of the events are being held outside of the arenas, and as I can hear right behind you, there's a lot of emergency vehicles going by right there at the Arc de Triomphe. So how big a security challenge does this pose for the organizers of these Games?
Yeah, it's a huge effort, has to be said, and you're right. I mean, we're just having a parade of cars coming up from the River Seine, and so drowning me out a little bit, but bear with me. It's a massive security operation, and certainly the authorities will be breathing a sigh of relief that this opening ceremony seemingly has passed off without incident. We did, of course, have this morning news coming through that saboteurs had caused huge chaos on the France's high-speed train lines, stopping people from leaving Paris, stopping people from reaching Paris, and so that will sharpen minds, certainly, that there's still work to be done in order to ensure that this Games is secure. In terms of the stadium, this now becomes a pretty typical sporting event now. They'd be pretty confident that they can keep those stadiums pretty secure. There's huge ring fences all over these various different sporting arenas, even if they are in some of these iconic places scattered amongst the city. The big test really was this opening ceremony, and seemingly that's passed off without incident, other than, of course, the rain, even though, of course, 75,000 security personnel on the streets of Paris ensuring that this Games passes off peacefully. It's still a big operation to come.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Stay with us. We will talk a little bit more with you in just a short while. Well, the opening ceremony happened this Friday, but some of the events actually started 2 days ago, among them rugby, handball and football. Brazil won their opening matches on women's handball and football. Earlier, I spoke with Mariana Mello from the Brazilian Olympic Committee about investments in technology and in female athletes, and started by asking her about her expectations for the Brazilian team.
Our expectations is to go well. As we went in Tokyo, we broke some Brazilian records there, and we are with a strong delegations with very dedicated athletes, and we hope to go better than we were in Tokyo.
Right, you say you want to do better than in Tokyo, and just to look at what you did in Tokyo, you got 7 gold, 6 silver, 8 bronze medals at those 2020 games. How much better are you expecting to do?
Yeah, we had 21 medals, as you just said. We hope to have 22 and above. We are a country that we are looking for having also medals in different sports. So we have 13 different sports with medals in Tokyo, and we hope to have more disciplines in Paris also.
Right, let's talk about football. Of course, Brazil is well known for that. Now, the Brazilian men's football team, after they won back-to-back gold medals, did not qualify for the 2024 games. What's the feeling on that in Brazil, and does this, in fact, put more pressure on the women's team?
Yeah, Brazilians are passionate about football. Everybody loves it. So yes, there is a feeling of frustration in the Brazilians because we will not see our football boys in Paris, but there is a lot of expectations on our women's teams in our women team. We hope that they can go very well in the competition and bring us again another women's football medal.
Right now, for the first time in Olympic history for Brazil, you'll be sending more women than men to this year's Olympics. How significant is that?
Yeah, that's a great achievement for us. Since the 2016 Rio Olympic cycle, the National Olympic Committee of Brazil strategically invested in women in sports, not only athletes, but also coaches and managers. So we saw an opportunity in increasing our results on the women's side. We did that, and the results are coming. We had the Pan American Games in Santiago last year, and for the first time, also we had more medals coming from women than from men. So the results are showing up of our investments and our strategy, and for the first time, we have more women in Paris than men, and that's very significant for us in Brazil as a society also.
Right now, Mariana, as you say, Brazil will be competing in many sports where it will be in medals contention. But what are some of the new disciplines that Brazil will be participating in at these games?
Yeah, we have. I don't think we have first time show ups in any discipline in Olympic Games, but we have some disciplines that for the first time maybe are potential medalists, like archery, where we have the men's first in the world ranking, like rhythmic gymnastics that we are growing fast internationally. So we have table tennis also with Hugo Calderano. So we have some disciplines that for the first time maybe are real potential for bringing medals to the country.
Right, and so much has changed in the way athletes prepare for the games. I mean, training methods have changed, new technologies have come on. In your view, how has technology and artificial intelligence, for that matter, changed the way that athletes prepare?
Yeah, we are using a lot technology, learning a lot how to do it. Also, we have a training center in Rio de Janeiro that's from our Brazilian Olympic Committee. And in this training center, we created a few years ago a sports technology area that is helping a lot on searching, researching, and applying a lot of technology, especially in video analysis and biomechanics. So we still have a long way to go. We are learning, we are studying, but for sure we believe that sports technology is the future, and it is, and it will be even more important in the high level sports. So we are sure investing it and planning to invest even more.
Now, of course, 8 years ago, Brazil actually hosted the Olympic Games. I mean, what are the big challenges that are associated with hosting an event that's this big?
Of course, it's the biggest event in the world. Many countries, many expectations. We have to have all the venues ready at the same time. We have all the relations, the different stakeholders, and this is a very big challenge to hosting the games. We know that by experience. We have stakeholders like sponsors, also the country government, the city government, the state government. So it's a lot of people, a lot of different interests, uh, but at the end it's worth it. We are sure that Paris, France, and are having a lot of challenges, but they will host great games.
Of course, we live in a world right now where we see a lot of tensions, where we see a lot of divisions among people. So when we look at an event like the Olympics, it brings together people from diverse backgrounds, people from all over the world. How important is it, games like this, to bring people together?
Yeah, it's an example to the humanity. We have the Olympic truths where, um, in theory, all the countries should be in peace with each other to compete in the Olympic Games. So we know that nowadays it's not 100% that, but the concept, I think, can teach human being uh, to be better and to grow, to evolve to a better world for all of us. So I think the Olympic Games are a great example. Sports is a great example, and I hope that we can learn with that.
Mariana, thanks so much for being with us. Okay, to continue our conversation on the Olympic Games, let's bring in our guests from Paris, where the action is. Danny Williams is still with us. From New York, Mike Bako is a sports editor at dailynational.com, and Paul Dong is co-founder and sports industry observer at EI Asia Limited. He joins us from Beijing. Welcome to all of you. Mike, let me start with you. I just want to pick up where Mariana left us there. We've been told very often that the Olympics is really a celebration. It's a celebration of the human spirit, of human endeavor. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to see the best that the world has to offer. Yet it happens at a time when all is not well in the world. We have the war in Ukraine, we have the bombing of Gaza by Israel, we have violence in Sudan right now. There's also conflict there. So how important then does that make the Olympic message of unity, of peace, of solidarity?
Yeah, there's something called the Olympic ideal, and that's really what it is, bringing all of these nations, whether they've historically liked each other or not liked each other, or shining a spotlight on what's going on from a current events perspective. The Olympics are generally a 2-week period of time where, while you can't put that to the back of your mind, you want to embrace the athletic spirit. So whether you are combatants on the battlefield or through history with different countries at war, or even different countries that have fallen out of favor, those athletes come and represent the athletic ideal. Now, is that always something that people want to hear or think about. No, the Olympics are also big business, and there's a lot riding on it, and there's a lot of corruption, and there are a lot of athletes that try to cheat because there is so much on the line. But when you do come down to it, when you do have an Olympic opening ceremony like they had today that went off flawlessly, that went off without any incident, it's a memorable experience. And that's what these athletes are trying to build. For so many of these athletes, this is their only one shot at glory. Every 4 years, maybe they go to a second Olympics, but they're not in very high profile sports. Sometimes they go off and have to live lives after this. Not every athlete is Simone Biles or Katie Ledecky or LeBron James or people like that here from the U.S. So this is really an opportunity in this 2-week period of time to celebrate that athletic ideal and that Olympic ideal.
Paul Dong, let's look at the Chinese participation in the Paris Games. There'll be 405 Chinese athletes. They will compete in 236 events in Paris. In fact, only the Beijing Games hosted a bigger Chinese team. China placed second in the last Games, just one medal short of the United States. So what are expectations for these Games?
Well, I think, yeah, we will see what can be heard after the opening ceremony, because it just happened during this, very wee hours, very early morning, and people were anticipating a very low rate, relatively a lower rate of, watching on TV over here in this part of the world. But this is a digital time and a different time, and that we will see how we can more fairly judge the success of publicity of the opening ceremony hours after when it really happened because of the time difference. And people were also speculating that maybe the younger generation's interest and their following of their own athletes overseas in competing in such an important event will be probably lower than some previous editions, but we are not sure yet, but we'll see. I think we're in a time when the younger generation are actually more following the personalities that they have been following, the athletes themselves, instead of their actual results of their numbers, but their personalities. And there are competing attitudes among these fans, even between, members of the same team. There are competitions. And this is something phenomenal that I have never experienced over the last few decades, the younger generation of Chinese are following sports of their national representatives very, very differently. And we will see how attractive their successful accomplishments in Paris will be attractive to fans back over here, or they simply follow an individual athlete's performance, we will see.
Okay, I want to get back to Dan in Paris. Dan, as Mike told us a moment ago, the opening ceremony was pretty flawless, but it was unique in one respect, that it was, as you pointed out, not held inside an arena. We saw the national teams go by on boats down the Seine River. What can you tell us about that? And I believe it took quite a bit of preparation to get that river ready for this opening event.
Yeah, indeed. It kind of has raised the bar, hasn't it, for these opening ceremonies. But certainly when you think about what this was the River Seine really taking center stage, and it really is such a key element of Paris, running straight through the middle of the city. And so quite rightly it was used and utilized as going past all of those iconic landmarks. And certainly, as you mentioned, the amount of effort that's gone in to try and make the Seine now a place that people haven't been able to swim in the River Seine for some 100 years. It's been illegal, and some $2.5 billion worth of upgrades have been implemented in order to hold events there. So we've obviously had people on boats today. Well, that would be pretty normal, but having actual events in the River Seine, the triathlon and some of the open water swims, for example, it's both scheduled to take place on the River Seine, given those upgrades. And then one of the legacy elements of this Paris Olympics will be the potential for Parisians then to be able to use sections of the River Seine to swim in, potentially from next year. So that's a key legacy element of this Games. Of course, there's still some skepticism as to whether the River Seine will be ready for these upcoming events. The triathlon may become a duathlon and won't have any swimming in it, which would be a little bit embarrassing given all the money that's been spent. But potentially this could be a real turning point almost for the River Seine and the potential value that it has for Parisians.
Mike, we have one new sport this year. It's called breaking, otherwise known as breakdancing. We also have surfing and skateboarding. They're back this year. I mean, is this all part of an effort to attract younger fans and, of course, younger viewers as well?
Absolutely. You hit it right there on the head. What the Olympic organizers are hoping for is for people like us to be talking about that. Certainly the bread and butter of what people want to watch and what are traditional sports like the track and field and the gymnastics and the swimming are going to have the most eyeballs and traditionally sort of catapult those national heroes if they're able to do well or burst onto the scene. You kind of see Simone Biles has become a household name, but these other new sports can become fun. Are they in the Olympic ideal and the Olympic tradition? No, but they're fun to watch. They'll gain some traction. If you think to the Winter Olympic Games, some of the more X Games snowboarding type sports that they brought in about a decade or so ago, people had the same reaction, and now those have become some of the most popular sports to watch during the Winter Games. So I think this is great from a public relations standpoint. Is it in the Olympic tradition? No, but times do need to change, and this is a business, and this is a TV apparatus, not only for NBC here in the States, but around the globe as well. So this will bring some eyeballs.
Right. One other decision, Mike, which surprised people here in the United States, and that is that baseball and softball are not part of the Olympics in Paris. I should mention that they are going to be back at the Los Angeles Games, which is in 4 years. But why were they omitted from these games?
I think part of it is cultural, just in terms of, in Paris, the baseball not being as popular. But as you did mention, in 28 in Los Angeles, not only will they be back, but there is a strong potential if Major League Baseball does allow their players to participate on the U.S. front as well as international. That'll really catapult it back into the consciousness. So every few years, they do sort of banish a few sports. Baseball and softball were those that went that way. I think part of it is just from an international perspective, the participation level not as high and the quality of the games not as high, even though if you look at the World Baseball Classic and other things like that, they have professional athletes, which the basketball women's and men's have. So I think that competitiveness is just not there right now.
Paul Dong, in addition to the games being broadcast, of course, on television in China, they will also be screened at movie theaters around the country. So can you give us some idea of how much interest there is in these games? I mean, as I pointed out earlier on, there's a big Chinese team going or in Paris already, more than 400 athletes there.
Yes, I think basically on the cultural side, I think various interest groups or businesses are looking for ways how to use what we call here the popular IP. Something can be attractive to the large crowds of younger people wherever they go. If they go to the cinema, let's bring some footages from the sports scene to attract them. Or if they are online, and let us do a lot of social media stuff to attract them. I think it's more about businesses chasing the potential consumer groups. If they, their loyalty to sports or culture or movie or entertainment cannot be very, very steady or stable. But at the same time, I think most recently the European football, the European Cup football turned out to be less attractive to Chinese football fans. And that is something alarm, reminding people that we should try other channels. And now, again, this is something happening in Europe, right. And you have to stay up, after midnight for some of the sports that you follow. And another factor is a lot of Chinese team sports have failed to qualify for Paris. And that affected negatively on fans' interest over here to follow their performances. And you mentioned more than 400 Chinese athletes are competing. And the number of women's athletes are double the size of the men's. That means the men's team sports failed so much.
Yeah. Dan Williams, you know, we were talking a moment ago about the fact that the organisers are trying to now attract more younger fans to the Olympic Games. Well, if we look at another set of figures here, there are an equal number of men and women at these games, 5,250 men, 5,250 women. Is that by design?
It is. It was actually a real part of the Bid Pro team from Paris, right from the off, that they were very keen to have gender parity at these games. In the end, we've just had some updates of figures. They actually fell a little bit short. There's going to be, we're told now, 5,630 men, 5,416 women. It's around 49%, but this is a big step forward in gender equality. And there's actually a history to this. In 1900, some 22 women appeared at the Paris Games back then. That was around 2% of the athletes. By 1996, that was up to 34%, Atlanta. And then here we are with that trajectory almost at 50%. So it's an incredible process. How did they get there? Well, you've got events like women's boxing that was only introduced at London 2012. Only 3 medal events back at London 2012. This time round, and back at London 2012, there were 10 men's events, gold medal events. This time round, there's 7 events each. And we've also got some other new events taking place, such as the mixed relay, race walk relay as well. So these kind of mixed events as well, which allows for this gender parity to become a reality. And it really is another big plus, it has to be said, for Paris 2024 and the legacy of these games.
All right, Mike, I've only got less than a minute left, but I want to squeeze this in. There will be hundreds of events taking place over the next 2 weeks. Are you going to be focused on any specific discipline, perhaps some very specific athletes, sportsmen or sportswomen that you'll be looking at?
Well, certainly keeping it in what we were just talking about there from a female athlete perspective, I'm really looking at, can Katie Ledecky do it? Can she get into the pool, and can she become the most decorated female Olympic athlete ever? If she gets 3 more medals, she'll have the most medals ever. She's also going for the most gold medals. Same thing with Simone Biles, trying to make it 2 times winning the overall gymnastics championship. That's something that's never been done before, as well as, and I'll make it quick, the U.S. women's basketball team trying to make it 8 straight gold medals, something that's never been done since the men did it back in the 30s to the 60s.
Okay, and that's where we have to leave it. Thank you to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C.